I asked you if you gave a damn about it, geeks, and you said yes. So today we are going to talk about bass migration and what I've learned about it using forward-facing sonar in the fall. All right, so before we get started on this, I'm going to put out a little disclaimer. If you are a forward-facing sonar troll, look, to all my geeks that watch all the time, if you don't like it, you don't agree with it, that's fine. You watch, you understand that what I'm about to tell the true trolls is that we don't do that here. If you come on here and you start bitching and moaning, I'm going to block you. We're not here for that. We talk about fishing. I've been married 31 years. I've heard enough of that on that side of my life, right? I hope my wife ain't watching this video. I love you, honey, if you are. But fishing is fun. We're gonna make fishing fun again. And so we talk about everything and every style, whether it's with electronics, without electronics, bank, boat, kayak, it don't matter. We talk about fishing here, and that's what this channel's about. There's all kinds of other channels that can't gain subscribers doing anything else but stirring the pot and making fishing suck for the rest of us. So go find those guys, because if you come down here talking and trolling and cussing about FFS, I just block you. I don't need you here. Now, I don't mean to be that guy, and I shouldn't even have to be that guy. Shouldn't have to. Everybody should fish the way they want to fish, the way they see fit, the way they have fun fishing. Period. Now, let me tell you what I've learned from my little cheater box. Okay, so I want to talk to you about really when the fall migration starts. Now, this is all related to my lakes, right? And a lot of this is going to be related to largemouth. Smallmouth's going to be a little farther behind a lot of times. So for me, this is all about largemouth, Highlands Reservoir, Clearwater lakes. You can take some of it to your lakes, but the one thing I want to know is that this is something that we've done over 5 years, okay? And what I mean by that is we fish the same lakes. Like, we're not going around like a bunch of pros fishing 20, 30 lakes a year and never coming back to them. We're actually following these bass all year long on 3 to 5 lakes, depending on what we fish. So we're in contact with these schools of bass consistently because we're out here consistently. And I know a lot of people, I've seen a couple of videos talking about there's no mass migration, and they're right, there's no mass migration, but there is a migration. Some bass migrate. Now, that could be more prevalent in the Highlands reservoirs, but we've followed them, especially with forward-facing sonar now, unbelievable distances. Now, when does it start? We've got to start from the beginning, and I put fall into really 2 categories. Kind of a mid-fall, but there's an early fall. An early fall here in the Appalachian Mountains, it starts here in late August. There was a major cold front come through. We had a false fall earlier this year, and it started the bass moving off the ledges where we had been catching them, just waylaying them all throughout the summer. And it started in August. 3 years ago, we were fishing a new lake, and the same sort of thing. We found these huge schools of bass out in open water, and as soon as the nighttime temps begin to fall, the daytime temps can be the same, but as soon as you have a consistent drop in water temps, first thing in the morning, those bass are on the move. Those shad will be on the move, and those bass will be on the move. So again, If you're up north, it's probably going to start a little earlier than that. If you're down south, it's probably going to start a little later than that. But water temperature really doesn't matter at that point. It's really as the summer high water temp, and you start to see that 3 degree, 4 degree, 5 degree drop as nighttime temps get colder and as days get shorter. That's the other key. The days are starting to get shorter as soon as it's officially summer. So now I break down fall into 3 categories. You've got late summer, early fall. And late summer, early fall for us, again, can run well into October. Now, because a lot of times our Octobers, and we've seen it snow on Halloween before, but a lot of times our Octobers generally tend to be fairly warm. And you know, we've grilled out for Thanksgiving. So we're not completely cool even into November. And it's not unusual for me to go out and catch some bass on topwater during the fall in November. And really anybody will tell you here, the real fall bite is probably the last 2 weeks of October and the first 2 weeks of November. And that's what I call mid-fall. So right now, we're in early fall. We're in the 1st of October here. And what I like about this time of year is you can have those days when you just get out and wreck them. We did that about 4 weeks ago. The water temps were dropping, a cold front was moving in, and the bass don't care about what the water temp is. They don't care about what the air temp is. What they do care about is that the water temp is dropping. So we're out there in August throwing at these fish on the ledge, and suddenly I literally see them on the sonar moving. They're moving in groups. And I even look at Mike and go, man, I think these fish are moving. We come back a day later, we're catching a limit by 9 o'clock in the morning, you know, in 2-3 hours on a very tough lake. We can't get a bite. We catch one bass all day. And what did we realize later in the day? We were in the wrong place. Those bass had already moved. They were already on the move in the fall. As a matter of fact, they had moved already almost a mile in a week. And that's what I still call early, that's early fall. So right now we're still in that early fall. So 3 years ago, we get on another lake and we notice in a major creek, about a third way back, we've got these huge schools. As soon as the nighttime temperatures start to move, they start moving. We go up there, we rock them. Next thing we know, we go up there a few days later, I bring a buddy, we can't catch a cold. Well, we go up there a few days later and we go down the lake a little bit, bam, there they are, we rock them. We go get a buddy, we take them up there to catch some bass with them. Next thing you know, can't catch a cold because we're fishing history. We hadn't figured out that those bass had already moved. Well, in that kind of 3 week span, what we realized is that those bass had already moved from late August to the 1st of, or to mid-September. They had already moved 1 mile to 2 miles down the lake. So we know those main lake open water roamers, they do move. Now they're not moving, notice I didn't say they're moving up the creeks. Here's where the myths begin to come in. They're moving down the lake. They're moving out of the creeks because they're in the first thirds. They're in the main lake already, in my opinion. And so what happened to those fish is they winter in some of the deepest parts of the lake. So what they're doing is they're moving, and those shad that they feed on, those groups of shad that they feed on, are moving to the deepest parts of the lake so that they can go through the winter. Because these lakes over here will freeze. Not very much, not very often, but they will freeze. So that's sort of myth one. busted. You know, they're not moving. If they're main lake and they're roamers, very unusual to see them move up into the creeks. And one of the things we found with those fish, they actually move 5 miles down the lake to get to an area by the dam where they then wintered. So as far as there not being a migration, there can be a migration. Now let's talk about what happens and what we discovered happens to the bass that are up in the creeks. So the bass that are in the creeks, I'm going to call them homers, right? Those are bass that live in the creek year round. And I think what happens, especially, and I think this is one of the keys, we knew this before forward-facing sonar, one of the keys is going to be active water. So there's some lakes that have arms that are ditches. In other words, the difference between a ditch and a creek is that you have active water. Active water, there has to be an active creek. It's a ditch if it just runs in the back of that, and they can be as long as some of your major creek arms when it rains. That's what we consider a ditch. So that gets us into the mid part of the year. Those main lake bass, a lot of times, once, especially largemouth, once we get into those low 60s or they get down to that area and they're done feeding those low 60s, sometimes they're just done. They're gonna go away. But what happens, at least on the lakes I fish, two things happen. You've got shad that live back there year round. You've got bass that live back there year round. And so what ends up happening is they congregate. The rainwater washes in some of the some nutrients, some things that the shad want to feed on. So the shad that already live back there are going to go on back there and they're going to bunch up. Well, that grouping up then causes the local bass, the resident bass, to move back there and group up. Now what we discovered, and I discovered this the hard way because we were going to fish a tournament. We did not practice for it, and we had been on fish. I mean, we'd been on fish all summer long, all fall long. We had just been rocking them. It was taking maybe 12 to 16 pounds to win on this lake. And I mean, we were catching that in broad daylight. That was our nighttime tournaments. We were catching that in the middle of the day, in the middle of the water. So we really thought we were going to go up there and weigh some in. Well, when we got there, and by this time, the water temps had really dropped down into those 60s to upper 50s. Now, I do want to say most of this is related to largemouth only. Smallmouth move a little differently, and it's why once we get to that 60, 58 degree water temp, what I call late fall, early winter, we go looking for smallmouth because around that time they start to get active. So we're really talking species specific right now. So we go up there, we're going to fish this tournament. They're all gone. I drive by a couple of creeks a couple of times, and I keep saying I need to go into this one creek, go into this one creek, with literally 10 minutes, 15 minutes left. We boat one 3-pounder. I hit another, but I'm so jacked up, I don't fight him correctly. He comes off at the boat. Literally those two fish would have put us in second place. And I told Mike that if we catch 3-pounders, we'd probably win, and we would have been very close depending on if they were upper scales, because it took 9 pounds to win. A dude had 5 fish. So, I threw them both back. So I threw the one we had. The one we had would have finished us in second place, but I was a little upset with myself. So the thing of it is we discovered quickly that once those main lake bass go to the bottom, those shad disappear. They don't disappear, they go to the bank. That's when you're going to really start to see those bass in the backs of the creeks get active. Now, Again, does this relate to you? Some of it might, some of it might not. We're on highlands reservoirs and they drain these lakes during the fall. So that also helps congregate the bass in the backs of those creeks. They drop that water, it pulls all those shad out, it pulls all those bass out, and they're all in one big bunch. And my theory and what we've kind of learned is that it's really those bass from like the midpoint of the creek that's there all year to the backs of the creeks. That's what you're finding back there in the backs of the creeks. The ones that live from that first third of the creek out to the main lake, they're gonna stay main lake. They're gonna migrate somewhere in main lake, and they're a lot more likely to migrate longer distances. Again, that's us just following those bass around, but it's been a pretty consistent pattern for 3 years for us now. For me, again, I don't have a lot of luck. I think it's rough when you're fishing clear bodies of water and you have a full moon. I try to stay away from the lake at that time, and if I don't, I try to get up here right at or before daylight. I think you're gonna get those in probably by 9, 10 o'clock. And if you don't, it's gonna be a grind. You're gonna have to go to the bushes, go to the laydowns. Now we've kind of talked about those macro movements of bass right now. I want to talk to you about the micro movements, because the macro movements is, you know, the macro movements, the big movements, they're gonna move from one spot to the next and stop, one spot to the next and stop. And from early fall and mid fall, what really happens there is, you know, they're gonna move. Every time the temperatures are kind of stable, they'll kind of almost go into a late summer. And so they'll find an area, and as that water temp is dropping, even if it's dropping a little bit, they're gonna feed. The feed bags are gonna be tied on. And this is really prevalent in October. We've just been through this actually, well, since I guess what, mid-September through October. So we had a cold front come through about 4 months ago. We got a fishing video actually on it. And I think it was just called fall junk fishing. And man, we pulled up, they had moved, we realized where they were at, we caught them. We come back, those bass are still there, 200 to 300 bass in a 50 yard by 50 yard section, sitting on a flat. We don't have flats. It's a 25-foot deep road bed in a channel swing. So that's where they're pushing shad up. There's also it's gonna be hard. There's rock down there. So guess what else is there? Crawfish. Caught a couple on a jig today, doing that, stroking a jig down there. The micro movements, the smaller movements, what we've began to notice really over the past 2 years by following these schools around is that they begin early in the morning, they'll be out in open water and they'll be spread out. And when that water temp is stable, when that weather pattern is stable, because 4 weeks ago we crushed them. Ever since then, it's been 80 and 60s at night. So that water temp's been stable in the, we'll say low 70s, low mid 70s, 71, 72, 73, 74. And what has happened is they've just spread out through the water column. They're not grouped up. And when they're not grouped up, there's not competition. It's tough to catch them on this lake. Now you can go around, you can throw a jig head minnow, some's gonna bite. That's what I call a grind day. In the fall, I'm not out there to grind. I'm out there to just bang and slang, you know what I'm saying? So what we started discovering though, is that as the sun come up, they would go, and on a cloudy day especially. So when the sun comes up, they're gonna go, and watercolor matters so much because they're gonna go to the banks. Now some of them are gonna go deep to the bottom to where you've got, you know, rock and cover. They're gonna belly to the bottom. They're going to set off the edge of ledge because, you know, that roadbed was there and it dropped off into the creek channel. A lot of them are going to sit right on that ledge, that hard bottom. But then you got a whole group that's going to move to some of the brush piles, the laydowns on the bank. And gosh, you can go over there and get right and have a good time throwing topwater baits, throwing soft jerk baits. Now, what we've kind of discovered is that as the day goes, as you've got a sunny day, they'll kind of get up in that brush. So they'll be, if we've got 10, 12, even 15 foot visibility here, they'll sit right on the edge. We've had a bluebird sky today, and I noticed they kind of buried up, not deep into the brush, but right in that upper edge. Now, the past 2 days, they've been overcast, and a little bit of rain, and they've just kind of suspended over top of it. When they're like that, holy cow, you can get such a good bite and just go around the brush piles. Now, not every brush pile is created equal. You're going to need a good brush pile. It's got a lot of good cover in it. And that's your micro movements. They're still in the same place, but you know, out there busting shad in the morning and chasing things around. Now, I will tell you, here's another little tip. When the air temperature is colder than the water temp in the morning, like this morning it's 45 degrees, they're not going to bust. They don't want to get out of their warm water and get exposed to the air. I mean, again, remember all these rules, all these things that we're seeing, doesn't mean they won't. We seen them bust this morning, but it was not just a smorgasbord go, woo, let's get the top one out, we busted them crazy. It ain't that. It's, oh, they busted over there, boom, we threw over there, bam, we caught one. That's it. The rest of them, you'd see them come up and just go. There wasn't shad jumping out of the water. You know, it's not a mad dash. So, but the bite picked up today. We caught a lot today, and today was the first day after a front where the nighttime temperature really plummeted, and so the water temp started dropping again. 2-3 days from now, while I'm sitting at work, it's gonna be on fire out here. I mean, they'll just get stupid. So, but what's happening is those bass will move down or all the way down here around this point, and they'll move down here by this dam. Mike, if you'll show them that. And this is where a lot of those bass are gonna winter. But now there's still a lot of bass up the lake and up in those creeks. And by the time these bass get down here and kind of stop feeding, now you go up the creeks, you start finding those shad. Guys, there's so much to this. It's so hard to put everything in there. So if you've got questions, definitely put them down there. I found these schools way before forward-facing sonar. You can go back 10 years ago and see us fishing the same spots on this lake with big swim baits and underspins, me and Mike, years and years ago. But with forward-facing sonar, we started understanding that these aren't fish that live in this spot. These fish move. And so why did we suddenly not get bites in those spots or get fewer bites in those spots? Because those bass have moved. They're not there. Now there may be a few residential bass and you might get a few bites. Those are the exceptions, not the rules. And I think that's what forward-facing sonar has done for me, is it's taught me a lot of the things that I kind of thought was going on was right, but it also taught me a lot of the things that I thought was going on, like they're moving up in the backs of the creeks, was completely wrong. But the great thing about forward-facing sonar, doing this and fishing the lakes that I've fished for years and years and years, 40 years, you know, I guess, is you really get to fill in the blanks, and that's what I've enjoyed doing. And I think that's going to help you guys with forward-facing sonar and without forward-facing sonar. I hope this all made sense. I know I'm glad Mike's editing it, and he's probably going to hate my guts by the time it's done. But I feel like this is a video that needs to get done and we need to get out there. Sorry geeks, this took a little bit of a minute. I will be reaching out to whoever wins the September box. I know we're behind, but we're getting caught up as we speak. Forgive me, September was, as I love to call it, September. This is not the one I want to use. Yes. Let's paste this in. And we will fetch on, include replies. We don't want to allow duplicates. And here we go. 85 comments. Let's see who wins. Frank Torres, 3081. Super great video for this time of year. Thank you, Hank. Hashtag underspin. Frank, congratulations, brother. I will drop a comment on your comment and let you know how to get a hold of me so we can get you your box of goodies. Thank you, brother. You geeks rock. All right, geeks, listen. If you got more questions, put them down there in the comment section. Now, if you want to see a video we did about those bass moving and us tracking them for 5 miles, make sure you go check out this video right here. Otherwise, questions and comments in the comment section below. If you got more questions about this, leave them in that comment section. It might lead to more videos, and I need help with all the content I can get. Like it if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you ring that bell. Be part of the 100% Watch Squad. Help us get to 100,000, and you geeks rock.